Today, we're talking about self-discipline, one of my favorite subjects. What are you good at? Now, you might say to me, I'm no good at anything. I'm shit at this, I'm shit at that. I'm great, I'm fantastic. But there are things that you do where you just discipline yourself to do things. You don't even think about it. You just do them. It's like ingrained into you. And that's where I hack my brain, because I know I can literally take the things I'm good at and then use them resources in some other area in my life that needs enhancing somehow, shape or form. And it's when you understand this simple hack, which I'm going to, I'll show you how to use it. Then we can literally do anything we want, i.e. use self-discipline to our own advantage at will. And if I go back to when I was a kid, I wasn't particularly good at exercise. I was crap. And I was thinking to myself, well, I would actually like to run. So I wanted to run. I wanted to overcome running, because when I was a kid, I had asthma. I still have got asthma. And I couldn't run 50 yards. And the kids used to take the piss out of me. I was known as a weak kid. So I had this desire to, right, I'm going to overcome this and I'm going to run. So I decided to put myself in for a triathlon. I swam regularly and did a charity bike ride a few years ago. So I was okay swimming and bike riding, but the running was the problem. And so to encourage myself to overcome the running, because I'd entered it, I've got a situation now. I'm going to look pretty stupid if I can get out and do the swim and then do the bike and not be able to run. So it forced me into training to run. I think it was 10K, the actual one I did. And it was hard, really hard. And if you've ever done any sort of training or exercising and stuff like that in the past, you'll know that training is a big part of an event, and probably the hardest part. It's the thing that makes a difference between you doing an event and finishing it to actually doing the event and having an enjoyable time. I didn't actually enjoy the run, I'll be honest with you, but it got me to run 10K. The longest I've ever run is, I think it's about 15K. I'm not going to go out running tomorrow. But in order to get the discipline to force myself to run, I had to enter myself into the event in the first place. And because of the way I am, do you remember I said about using discipline, using hacks? I know that I did not want to sit there talking to friends and family and I go, oh, how did you get on with the triathlon? Oh, I didn't do it because I didn't train properly. I can't like that. I'm one of these people. If I publicly state it, I've got to do it. I've got to do it. It's not me to not do it. So that's one of and that's to me where sort of the self-discipline comes in, because I'll publicly state something or I'll let someone know I'm going to do something. And that gives me that impetus to be able to say, I'm going to do, because if you think about it, sometimes it's fucking hard to do shit, right? Sometimes we don't want to do it. I do crazy shit. I go and put myself into London to Paris on a push bike ride, but not just London to Paris. I want to do it in 24 hours. Right. So that's the way I roll. I'm not going to do I don't say on the right road to Paris. I mean, it's a big thing riding to Paris on a push bike. And people go, wow, 200 miles in one day. It's a different kettle of fish. That's hardcore. But that's how I roll. But how do you deal with that sort of stuff? You know, because I was training yesterday, and training for me has been hard only because of the circumstances I found myself in the last 4 months. I was not in a great place. I knew exercise was important to me as a person. You know, in my core, it's what I do. You know, I'll regularly ride 10 miles, 10 hours a week, sometimes 15. And I went down from doing that on average to 1 hour a week, you know, in the last couple of months. It's been really hard. And mates of mine have encouraged me and encouraged me and encouraged me. And in the end, I thought, well, I've got to do something now. I've got to do something. So there's a younger lad that wants to train with me. So I utilize that competitive streak in me to say, oh, come bring your train around then. Now I've committed. He's coming round with his trainer after he's finished work. I don't want to let the guy down. I want to say, I mean, I've done this before in the past. I don't fancy it, or I don't this, or I don't that. But when you're committed, right? And then when he turns up, he ain't going to beat me. He's not. I know he's 27 and I'm 60. He's not going to beat me. So I've already, in my mind, I've already prepared to that discipline to, I don't need self-discipline, man, if that makes sense, because I've overridden it. Another word for self-discipline could be willpower. Think about it, right? I ain't got the willpower. No, you ain't got self-discipline. let's get real, right? So I look at the things that I've stopped doing in the past. I've stopped smoking in the past. I've stopped drinking in the past. And in order to do that, there's a process you have to go through. And one of the things you have to ask yourself is, why am I doing this? And if you've got a big enough why, you'll find the how. That's an old cliche, I suppose. And I knew that that smoking was damaging my health. I'm asthmatic, for goodness sake. Right? My mother died of asthma. So if anyone should take notice of non-smoking asthmatics, it should be me. And to my embarrassment, when I was smoking, I remember buying 40 cigarettes, two packets of 20, the night before I got home. And I opened the first 20 of the following morning. And I used to work a lot in London at the time. I used to travel up in London. I used to do a lot of business from about 7:30 in my little office at home, a lot of admin, and then 9, 10 o'clock, and let's make a lot of calls. And by 11, 12 o'clock, I'll be on the road into London. And I think it must have been 11:30, 12 o'clock, I got in the car, driving up the A2 to London, and realized I'd opened the second packet of cigarettes. So I'd opened and lit, and I say this because this is quite important, open and lit 20 fags. I didn't smoke all of them because some were in the ashtray and they just burnt away. Because I used to, have you ever done that? I mean, I made myself a cup of coffee earlier. I've got a cup of coffee, it's cold. Well, how many times have you done that? Made yourself a drink, it's gone cold. Well, I used to light cigarettes and they'd be in the ashtray, and the ashtray was by the window because I like smoking too much in the house. So all the smoke used to go outside, and I forgot the cigarette was there. Then I'd light another one. But so I lit 20 fags. I probably smoked 3/4 of them, if I'm honest. And as I opened the second packet, I thought, what the? No. And that was it. Because if you want to stop something, or if you want to go something, there's a moment at which a decision is made. And the decision was made that moment. I opened the second packet and thought, I cannot continue doing this. And in my mind, I knew why. Excuse me. I knew my health. I had kids. I was wheezing a lot. And it wasn't good for me. And it wasn't my fault, because when I was a kid, I mean, my earliest memory of smoking was when I was about 11, 12. And I grew up in a pretty nasty neighborhood. It's quite trendy now, but at the time it was nasty. In a state-run school in London. Not a nice place. But in order to puff yourself up a bit, because I was a weedy kid, it was hard if you smoked. 11. I mean, how many kids smoked at 11, right? 13, most of my mates started. I was 11. Walking down the road with my fags, thought I was Charlie Big Bananas, didn't I? Ooh, really cool. And all the adverts used to push us down that road, the Marlboro Man with his horse and his fags, or the Formula One racing cars with Marlboro or JPS written all over them. They've banned the advertising now. They even say on the packets of cigarettes, smoking kills. They knew smoking killed all them years ago, but they encourage you to do it. So I'd got into a habit, and we know that nicotine is an addictive drug. And I was addicted because of the advertising, effectively, and because I was an idiot, because I thought I was cool. And then the self-discipline kicked in. I thought, that's it. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to make a plan, and I'm going to replace it with something else, because that's the key to this. If you want to stop something, replace it with something else. And so I overdosed on exercise. I was in the gym twice a day because I saw myself as a non-smoker, which made it easier for me to impose that self-discipline, because I had something else to focus on, which was I'm a non-smoker. So I saw myself not smoking. And that's an important part of the process. So understanding why you want to stop, or whatever you want to, if you want to do something, and then making sure that your identity fits in with that. And it's the same with the triathlon, or when I decided that I wanted to ride to Paris. I remember the first time I made the decision, because I'd seen the YouTube video of the woman who does the London to Paris in 24 hours. And she said, that's bragging rights. I like that idea. Bragging rights. Yeah. You post that on Strava if you're an athlete, and someone sees you've just done something in 24 hours, that's kudos. So that was the driver for me. That was like, wow. And then I decided to book it. And it was on the end of April, beginning of May. And I think it was the 1st of May was the day you actually rode into Paris, because you start on a Saturday afternoon and you ride to Paris in the Sunday afternoon. So you do it over the 24 hours. That includes the ferry across from Newhaven to Dieppe. So I booked it, and it had 8 weeks to get ready. 8 weeks to prepare to do a 200-mile bike ride. Talk about focus the mind. I have now got to make sure that I'm prepared, fitness as well as mentally. So I immediately got, and the great thing about stuff we're talking about today, I got my best mate out. I clicked on the app on my computer, and my best mate's called Google, because you could Google anything. A training plan to ride 200 miles. Bang, loads of shit comes up. I'm looking at the information, trying to find out the person that's done it, or who's written it, and find out if they've got any credibility. I found a plan, thought that's it, bang, looked at it, thought that doesn't quite fit because it says 12 weeks. I've only got 8 weeks. And then I Googled some more bits and pieces, and I've got a plan together so I could then train to get myself ready. You might be one that sits on the couch or sits in front of the computer. You might not be sporty at all. But let's impose this on to something more practical. I wanted to write a book. I've been told that, writing a book was great. And, I was involved in a business that would have benefited tremendously. It's like it's the best business card you could ever have. And I can tell you now, because I'm egotistical, and I do remember being on a plane once saying to someone, yeah, I've written a book. Have you? Yeah. And they Google me while I'm sitting next to them. And there's nothing better feeling to see your name come up on the Google search of your book that you've just written. It was an ego boost. But that's not the reason why I wrote it. I wasn't far off it, but it wasn't the reason why I wrote it. But I'm dyslexic. I can't even say it properly. Dyslexic. So for me to write a book is very, very difficult. So if you're good at writing, it's not going to be as hard for you. I do remember watching a guy called Patrick Soliart who had MS or not MS. He's got something seriously wrong with him. He can't even walk properly. He types with one finger. And he wrote a fucking book. One finger. One thing. If he can do it, for fuck's sake, so can I. But having dyslexia causes a few issues, as you can imagine. So I do remember making a decision. I wanted to learn to type because then, I was writing quite a lot of stuff at the time, and it was painful to. If you'd have watched, my missus used to go, "Oh God," watching me type something. It was a nightmare. So I decided that I got something called Mavis Beacon's Learn to Type. And I installed it on my computer. That's before I had Macs. It was when I had PC. And I used to get up every morning and I used to go for a ritual. I used to get my journal, write in my journal. I'd look at my goals and say, right, okay, what am I going to do today towards my goals? And one of them was to practice Mavis Beacon's for 15 minutes a day. I got up to 6-minute touch typing, but got knocked back to 20 words a minute because of the mistakes I was making because of the dyslexia. So I could have easily got disgruntled with that or upset with it because it was knocking me back to 20 words a minute. But what I was pleased with, the fact that I was getting 60 words a minute, was the positive, not the negative 20. Because I knew if I could type at that pace, then Microsoft would take care of the rest. Because have you ever written a document on Word and you misspell something or you miss grammar? It comes up. It auto-corrects. It's the great thing with modern technology. I wrote something today for someone, and about 3,000 words this morning after I got up. And when I looked at it, because I don't look at the screen when I type, I just won't, because all it does will just frustrate me. The amount of mistakes even now that are there are vast. Now, if you get upset easily because you're not perfect, wow, you're never going to do anything. Trust me, you're never going to do anything. But I knew whatever happened, I could correct it. When I wrote it, two things happened. One, I was speaking to the publisher. This is typical of me, really. And the publisher was saying, have you written your book? I went, no. And she went, oh, well, give me a call when you've done it. And I'm thinking, whoa, you don't believe me. You know, when there's a tinge in someone's voice, it's like, oh, for goodness sake, I'm dealing with a complete Wally who's not even written their book. Now, I know she told me afterwards. She has loads of people saying, yeah, I'm going to write a book, going to write a book, going to write a book, but they never, ever get round to it. And I do remember having a conversation with her about this. And she said one of her clients was a model client. He got because I was talking about publishing and all that. And she said he got it done all in 6 weeks. And I thought, right, I'm doing mine in 4. I hadn't even written it. Right? So I said to her, I'll get the manuscript to you in 2 weeks' time. And she went, oh, okay, yeah, fair enough. All right. The disdain in her voice was enough to spark me into think, I'll show you. Right. And I didn't finish it until 2 weeks and 1 day late, because I was supposed to email her. I said, I'd email you on the Monday week. And it was the Tuesday. So I wrote an apology letter to say, I do apologize for getting this 1 day late. Now I'm taking the piss. I'm having a little dig here, right? Because she's had a go at me in her own way by looking down at me. And anyway, she got that. She went, oh, okay. She didn't expect it. And she told me afterwards it was probably the worst book they've ever had to edit. Worst book. Now, I could have taken that to heart, couldn't I? I could have taken, oh, my God, it's the worst book. You know, all the mistakes I'm making. Oh, my word, I'll never be able to write a book. But no. Anyway, 4 weeks from the moment I spoke to her, I had the proof copy in my hand, which is what I wanted. And then she told me that the guy she was talking about, who I knew well, who'd done it in 6 weeks, it took him 2 years to write his bloody book. It took him 6 weeks to get it published. The process for publishing, I've got her to do it in 2 weeks for me, and I've written it in 2 weeks just to get the proof copy in my hand. I mean, that's ridiculous, really, but that just shows you the sort of thing that I use to impose that self-discipline, having a self-imposed deadline. The fact that I wanted that with her within 2 weeks, and the fact that I said it to her and she laughed at me, was enough to drive me to get it done. Self-discipline is not just about one thing. There's a multitude of things that go on around it. You know, it's like a combination of things together. Acceptance of, you know, what's in front of you, and not allowing things to stop you from doing what you want to do. It would be easy. I remember when I was training for something a while ago and I got COVID and it affected me. So I just had to adapt. And that's a really important part of the process, is adapt my training because I had COVID, and accept that this has happened. There's nothing I can do about it. Could have been worse. Could have been far worse. And I just knew that this was part of the process, that accepting of things go wrong. You know, you could have all the discipline in the world, but if your mindset is not there with you, helping you along, it can hinder you. And then you get frustrated. And when you get frustrated, that's when your self-discipline goes out the window. So it's understanding these little nuances within that. So I suppose if you could look at it, it's like it's self-discipline is like an ideal. It's not one thing. It's a combination of things together that allow you. And everyone says, oh, it's self-discipline. No, it's not. It's not just self-discipline. It's a load of little things together that add up to something bigger, that ideal of self-discipline. So now we know it's an ideal. It's like there's loads of facets to it. How do you implement this into something in your life? Well, let's take, for instance, you want to achieve something like a goal, like you want to run a marathon. My son-in-law's running a marathon. So you've got an idea of what it is you want. Ask yourself this question: why am I doing it? What's the purpose of it? What's driving it? Mine was, my first triathlon was running. I wanted to overcome that running, and now I've done it. I don't give a shit about running anymore, but at the time it was important to me. So a classic, another one for me was riding to Paris. I didn't want to ride to Paris on 4 days. I wanted to do it in 24 hours. It's what it represented about me, i.e. what it says about me means, who am I? So it sort of touches on my identity. So I did it because I wanted to show people it doesn't matter how weak you might feel, how pathetic you might feel. I felt what you see in front of you is completely different to was knocking about at school who couldn't even run 50 yards. What it says about my life is I'm not that weak kid. That's why I do these things. So find out what it is. Why are you doing it? What's the reason behind it? And then once you've got that and you understand that, who are you going to become in order to fulfill this? Whether it's packing something up or whether it's doing something. And then book yourself on. Go and commit. Make that commitment. Put yourself in a position where you just don't want to turn back. Make it like I did when I booked it, paid the 500 quid to do it. Now you're committed. Now you commit. Like when I said to Mindy, I'll have that booked to you in 2 weeks' time. She would have probably remembered that if I hadn't done it. Yeah, there's that idiot who said he was going to get in 2 weeks' time. Ha, 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 ha. She was never going to say that about me. Ever. But if I say to Mindy, I'm going to do this, guess what she's going to think? In fact, I'll tell you a little story behind that as well, because when I had that proof copy, I got the family round. We went out for dinner. And I've put the book on the table. And my kids had looked at me as if to say, and I looked at them and go, I've just written a book. Yeah, you said you was going to do that. What do you mean? But aren't you proud? But Dad, you always do what you say you're going to do. That's who I am. That's who I become. Who are you going to become? What's it going to say about you? What does your self-discipline ideal say about you? Take a long, hard look. Write it down. And just go and fucking do it.